Nearly a third of all Japan's energy comes from nuclear power. There are 55 different nuclear power plants across the country, all of which have multiple reactors. 2 of the nuclear plants in Japan are in a state of emergency tonight after a massive 8.9 earthquake and subsequent tsunami not only knocked out power to the cooling systems that prevent the nuclear core in those reactors from melting down, but they also then knocked out the backup systems as well. They've been working on battery-powered double backup generators. They've been trying to restore full power ever since. At the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant, where 2 reactors are in trouble, radiation levels inside the control room are reportedly 1,000 times normal levels. Radiation levels at the gates of that facility are reported to be 8 times normal. Authorities told an estimated 45,000 people in a 6-mile radius around that plant that they needed to evacuate. This is in one of the hardest hit areas of Japan. They have vented some of the radioactive vapor from the reactor in order to relieve the pressure. That does release radiation into the atmosphere, but they're hoping the cure is better than the disease. To the south of that facility, at the Daini plant, 3 reactors are in a declared emergency situation there. Authorities there have now told an estimated 3,000 people within a 2-mile radius of that plant to evacuate, while they consider whether to release some of the radioactive vapor from those reactors as well. So far, the Japanese government says it can contain the nuclear meltdown threat, but President Obama made it clear today that the United States is standing by to help.
I've asked Steve Chu, our Energy Secretary, to be in close contact with their personnel to provide any assistance that's necessary, but also to make sure that if in fact there have been breaches in the safety system on these nuclear plants, that they're dealt with right away.
Joining us now is Joe Cirincione, president of the Plowshares Fund, a global security foundation, and full disclosure, my friend. Joe, I wanted to talk with you about this all day today, at least as soon as I realized how serious it is. Thanks for your time, man.
My pleasure, Rachel.
How you are not a guy who gets easily worried, I know. How worried are you about this situation in Japan? How confident are you that the nuclear energy world knows how to resolve something like this?
I am very worried, and I'm getting increasingly worried. And part of that worry is that we're not getting very good information out of Tokyo Electric Power Company. It's not really clear what's happening. They maybe have retained control over the coolant systems as these 2 reactors, but what's happened all day is that they've assured us that the situation is under control, and then they will release another statement that indicates it's not in control at all. We have never seen something like this. We have never seen multiple reactors at risk. We have at least 2 reactors that they say at the Daiichi site that are having coolant problems. There's another 3 reactors that you say at the Daini site that are also at risk. Nothing like this has ever happened in the nuclear power industry. We are in uncharted territory.
In terms of the worst case scenario, I don't know much about nuclear disaster, but I think I know that Chernobyl did not have a containment facility around their reactor that blew up, and these Japanese reactors do. Is that reason to think of this as a qualitatively different thing? Should we stop invoking Chernobyl because it's too different than even the worst case scenario here?
Most experts do not think there's that great a risk of an explosion at these sites, but it could happen if the containment vessel gets too much pressure built up. And as you noted on the show, they now have 2 times the design pressure building up inside these containment vessels. So it's not out of the question. It's just considered unlikely at this point. And as Ed Lyman said before on the show, that was a very hot explosion, a very high plume of radioactive material. So probably nothing of that magnitude. It's more like a 3-mile island scenario in these boiling water reactors where the core melts and will drop through the containment vessel, and then you want to make sure that the concrete, which is feet thick, can contain that molten core. If that fails, then that is really the worst case scenario, that the entire containment structure collapses. Then we're talking about massive releases of highly radioactive material.
And the highly radioactive material that would be released in a case like that would be released in a gaseous form, and would it form a radioactive cloud that could then move?
Absolutely. Once this hot material starts hitting the atmosphere, starts hitting other structures, you're getting fires, you're getting smoke, you're getting particulates. Then, of course, you have ground contamination. We've never actually seen something like this happen. They stopped 3 Mile Island before it got to that stage. We have to all hope that the Tokyo officials know what they're doing, that they're able to contain this, that the generators are being rushed in there, can get online. We're going to know in the next few hours whether the situation will be under control. We should know by tomorrow morning just how bad it is, if we can get the nuclear power industry to actually give us up-to-date information. In
terms of these next few hours, and as you say, we're not going to know how this is going to resolve in the best case, not for the next few hours. Is the evacuation effort so far, the 6-mile radius they've drawn, thousands of people moved under very difficult circumstances, does that seem appropriate to you in terms of protecting the population there?
That is a minimum evacuation scenario that you would want. It depends. You know, if you're just having release of radioactive steam, that's not supposed to happen. That you don't like that. No amount of radioactivity is safe. But then that radiation, that evacuation scenario makes sense. If you're going to talk about massive releases of more radioactive steam, then you really would be talking about hundreds of square kilometers you would like to evacuate. Fortunately, these are close to the sea. The winds are blowing west to east, so it would blow most of the radioactivity out to sea. And of course, in a catastrophe, it would blow all that radioactive material over to the west coast of the United States.
Are there international resources that could be brought to bear on this that would make a difference, or is Japan as good as anyone at dealing with this technology?
Japan is very good. These reactors are generally considered in Japan the state of the art. These are particularly old designs, but they have relatively high construction standards for their reactors. The IAEA can be brought in to help on this, and of course, in the cases of airlift, which is what the President was talking about today, the United States could help lift things like generators, backup power supplies to these. This really should be an all-hands-on-deck exercise. As bad as the natural disaster was today and still is today in Japan, this could be a technological catastrophe here. For my money, this is the most important part of this tsunami crisis to be focusing on right now.
It is also the thing that could turn this tragedy and disaster for Japan into an international tragedy. Joe Cirincione, president of the Plowshares Fund, you are smart and lucid about these things at a time when we really need that. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Rachel.